All right, we are live back again. I'm so excited. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Today I am super excited to introduce you to someone who I admire and am thrilled to get to work with at Love.Life Telehealth. But first, before we get into her story, I will just tell you a little bit about me. My name is Dr. Niki Davis, and I am a former rocket scientist turned lifestyle medicine physician with Love.Life Telehealth. And I am extremely passionate about helping my patients get well and stay well by treating the root cause of their chronic lifestyle related medical conditions so that they can live life to the fullest. Now, today is special because I have the absolute pleasure of introducing you to one of my colleagues and friends, Dr. Keary O'Connor. Now, Dr. O'Connor is an incredible physician, and I am just so excited for you to get to know her just a little bit better and about the amazing impact that she is helping make with her patients. So, hello, Dr. O'Connor. I am so thrilled to get to chat with you today. How are you?
Good, Dr. Davis. Thank you very much. It's a real privilege today to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I guess out of the gate, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background? Like a little
So
bit about
I,
where you came from. Who are you?
okay, I'm still figuring out what I want to be when I grow up, but but like you, actually, medicine is a second career for me. So I have had several renditions of who I am in life, and I spent about 10 years working for GE, and I worked for their plastics division. So with spec materials and sell materials into automotive, furniture, and medical parts. And I found that I was spending a lot of time on the personal side with the people I was calling on, and the material side, but much more the personal side. And I'd come from a very strong medical family and swore I'd never go into medicine, but I just kind of naturally gravitated that way. So I went into family medicine and then became not only board certified in family medicine, but obesity medicine. And then I turned to lifestyle medicine. So I am still currently boarded in all three areas. And officially left what we would call like brick and mortar medicine probably 2.5 years ago, somewhere around there. And I don't know that I could ever go back because of this telehealth environment and the amount of time I get to spend with patients and how much I get to interact with them, get to know them. And it gives me a better opportunity to get to kind of the root cause, which is very similar to what I did when I was in sales, and you're trying to like troubleshoot an issue or get to the root cause of an issue. But it's a little bit much, it's a bit deeper here and a little bit more meaningful to me here. So that's a little bit, it's kind of in a capsule.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have to agree with you. It makes such a difference as a doctor to get to actually spend time with your patients, right?
Huge. Yeah. It's
So,
joyful. It's like joyful and it motivates us, like you get excited to see your patients. You get excited to get up in the morning. You're like, wow, I get to do this, and to spend 30 minutes. Sometimes I wish I could spend more. And I love the hour, visits. And I know that sometimes that's not always feasible for people, but just the amount of information we get ahead of time before our visits really allows us to maximize time with patients. And it's so beneficial on so many levels. So,
oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm sure you kind of had a similar situation as, I mean, I can't say that I got burned out as a physician because when I went to medical school, it was specifically to do this kind of medicine. But certainly those 3 years of residency, I got pretty burned out, just
Yeah.
the system and dealing with the short appointments, not
Yeah.
having enough time, even though I was really passionate about lifestyle medicine at that time already and helping people make improvements using lifestyle changes. I felt rushed and I felt like I didn't have enough time to even get that in, even though I really wanted to. So
Yeah.
I'm sure for you, that burnout was very real. Did you know at the time that you were going to, I mean, I guess, how did you transition into lifestyle medicine from what you were
So
doing?
I was working for Medicare Advantage. Well, so it's actually starts a long time ago. So before I went into medicine, I'd always kind of been concerned about health. But when my daughter was little, I was working on, you know, like cleaning up our diet, and getting rid of the McDonald's and the fast food because it was kind of watching her behavior and realizing like we just need to stop this. Not only that, but it was just expensive and your calorie per nutrient density ratio is pretty low with that kind of food anyways. So, well, the calories are high, the nutrient density is pretty low. Um, so I started kind of cleaning things up a little bit and then didn't do much in med school or residency other than work on kind of myself and my own nutrition. But it was when I was in the military. I was after med school, after residency, after working for a couple years, I decided to raise my hand and join the service. So,
Well, we got to
so
dig into that at some point too. Like, what made you do
yeah,
that?
yeah. So I went to so backtracking a little bit. I went to med school and residency as a single parent, which I would not advocate for anyone ever. And then worked for a
Wow,
couple years. And
that's
I'd kind of
incredible.
wanted to join the military, but as a single parent, I was like, "There's no way." So when I finished residency, my daughter had finished high school, and I was going into college. So I was like, "Oh, now's the kind of time to do it." And I was working in the emergency room. I was in a private practice during the day, and then at night on the weekends for 20 months straight. I didn't have a day off, and I worked nights and weekends. Loved the ER experience. It was like hanging on for dear life. It terrified me every shift I was in there. But I learned a ton, and I go back and I think it's one of the best experiences I ever had. Terrifying, but I thought, well, I'd always wanted to join the military, and when I joined, I thought, well, this is going to be better because I wasn't going to see a lot of the shenanigans with controlled substances and everything that I saw there. And the practice I was with had kind of been a big pill mill practice, which really opened my eyes. I was not remotely prepared to walk into what I did. So I thought the military was going to be better, not realizing at the time and where I was stationed was no different. It was the same thing in uniform. And I remember being in Iraq, and there were bottles of like hundreds of Percocet on the shelf, like in our aid station in Iraq. I was like, why are people carrying M16s and taking Percocet? Like it's not a good idea.
Right.
Um, so anyway, so I came back, and I had always, been kind of an athlete. It took me, I think, into my adult years to really mature into what my body was capable of as an athlete, and was stationed in Germany and had some really good trainers, like phenomenal. And one was really a top performer, like at Kona, for triathlons, which is like the mecca for triathlons. He was a formerly from East Germany. Wonderful man. And I started to then follow some plant-based athletes. I was like, these guys are crazy. I was looking at like Rick Besselson and Rich Roll and Scott Jurek, and I was like, there's no way. So in August of 2013, so it's been 11 years, I was on a vacation by myself in Edinburgh, Scotland. And I got off the plane, and I just remember saying, well, if I can do it here, I can do it anywhere. And I just went cold turkey. So it was an interesting week in a country I'd never been to, a city I'd never been to try and figure out how I could eat whole food plant-based. It was an
That's,
adventure.
I bet, because I've been there as a plant eater, and
Yeah.
they serve some interesting things that are
Yes.
definitely not plant-based at all, like
Right.
haggis, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
black pudding.
Well, yeah, and to make it worse, so I went to one of the Inner Hebrides Islands when I was there. So it's like planes, trains, automobiles, and then you're on one of these, outer lying islands. Try to eat plant-based there. So you're trying to explain to somebody, but I did it, and I came back, and I've never looked back. So I slowly
Wow.
started that journey. When I left active duty, I was honorably discharged in 2014. So it's been 10 years that I've been out of the military. I took the T. Colin Campbell plant-based course, and I had been involved a little bit with PCRM and started communicating a lot with Neil Barnard and entertained going to work for him, but decided not to. And then I looked at my doing the obesity boards, because I knew that was a big problem. It had been a big problem when I was in the military as well too, active
I
duty,
bet.
big
Yeah.
problem. And then I was in New Orleans, and I was had come back from the military, living in New Orleans, and working for Medicare Advantage, and just seeing like all the craziness in Medicare Advantage and how people were really unhealthy, and how even if you have somebody who has diabetes and you can help them and reverse it, they're still coded because of the risk scores. It's a whole complicated system. So it's not a system that really kept people well. It was more like, how are we going to keep them out of the hospital, but not necessarily
Mm.
promoting health. So I had an office manager at the time who really was conducive to me promoting some of the materials from PCRM. They do a really good job of offering materials in offices. She got me some racks. I joined the CHIP program and delivered some CHIP programs to our office staff, and then also to the community, and was actually able to change some hearts and minds, not only with patients who I had that had diabetes, and I would talk to them about their diabetes. It was only after going through the CHIP program, one gentleman stood up and he said to the class, just in tears, he goes, I have diabetes. and he'd had it for years, but he didn't really recognize, like, once we went through the program, he stood up. I was so proud of him. I still think of him today. Just a great person. And one of our docs actually, who changed his life dramatically. And I remember hearing him talk to patients about nutrition, and he went through this program, and then how he changed, not only himself, I think he lost about 50 pounds, and then dramatically changed his life. But then also I would hear him talk about nutrition to patients as well too, and had changed what he was doing. So then I saw really the benefit, and I didn't know much about the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and I learned in 2020 about them and became board certified at their next round, and just have never really looked back. You never finish learning, you never know it all, and you can never know it all. And there's always like a new study or a new person looking at something a new way. The foundations and the fundamentals don't really change. Looking at the 6 tenets of lifestyle medicine, and other people have had it, they've got their 10 or 12 or 15 or 9 or whatever it is. But the basic tenets of the 6 don't change. And if you really focus on those, that's what I found is really joyful. It's enjoyable, it's doable, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. So that's kind of like what brought me there, and sort of the revelations that I've had along the way.
And I have to agree with you, because if you really think about what are those pillars of lifestyle medicine, they're all based around the very basics of health, and they aren't expensive tests,
Right.
expensive supplements,
Right.
medications, right? They really are just getting down to the brass tacks of what do you
Right.
need to do to have a healthy life and live a
Right.
long healthy life. And it's,
Right.
diet, exercise, sleep, stress, relationships, staying away from harmful substances. And then if you have
Right.
a passion along there too, like, you and I are both very passionate about this. We could probably talk about it for hours, but
Right.
having that thing that gets you up in the morning, that gets you excited.
Right.
Um,
And I
and
get
I,
I get a little overzealous about it at times, and I know I have to back down a little bit. So yeah.
no, we need people like you. We need people like you. And I'm just so glad that you are a part of this movement, because it is so important that we have people who are passionate about this and want to talk about this. And I have to say, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about having you as a coworker, we getting to work together. Not only do we share our knowledge between all of the doctors that we work with, right? But what I've noticed, Keary, is that one of the things that you do is that you're always reading new information and finding new information and keeping us up to date on those things. That's also really important, because there's always new things that come out. I mean, that
There is.
amazing study that came out about with Dr. Ornish and reverse
Right.
mild cognitive dysfunction, things like that we just really need to stay on top of. But
Right.
what I have to say is, when you're really this passionate about it, it's really easy to, because
Right.
you can't get enough.
Right. 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 It's really interesting. And there's so many sources that you can go to, and so many places to go. So, I stick with like some of my sources, and some of the best places to go that people are pretty reputable. It's like PCRM, right? He does such a good job, like foundational, right? And
Yeah,
then you add in,
pcrm.org, right?
yep, PCRM.org. And then what the Esselstyns do at the Esselstyn Foundation, what they've done at True North, and what they've published there, and what they're continuing to do. Not to forget, Joel Furman Foundational, but there's some really good people out there as well too, that break down studies that make it, just because we have doctor in front of our name doesn't necessarily mean that we understand every study that comes out. So there's really good people out there like Chris McCaskill from Plant Chompers, who can break down studies. I have to slow it down a little bit because he talks so fast. But even like Sean Hashmi, or Stephen Loam, the cardiologist, and Sean Hashmi, the nephrologist, so going to these very independent sources who are plant-based themselves, who are living the lifestyle themselves, who have got stories themselves of what led them, and looking at, all the data across the spectrum. There's a lot of different sources out there, and they're fun, and some of them are really entertaining, but I really stick with the ones that are evidence-based, that help.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important to remember, that lifestyle medicine isn't off in its own little world somewhere. It's evidence-based.
Right.
So it isn't like we're doing some kooky science here. This is something that's all based on evidence. So one of the things I did want to ask you about is if you have a patient case that sticks out to you that you could share with us. Of course, we can't share names and details. We don't want to
Right.
give the person away, but maybe in a general sense of kind of something that stuck out to you that you've been interested in seeing.
So I have two, actually. One was from almost exactly a year ago when I first dipped my toe in the pond to see, like, I want to try this with patients. And it was a patient with type 2 diabetes. And I talked, at the time, I didn't know as much about plant-based eating as I do now, and just about the lifestyle medicine and the six tenets as I do now. I've come a long way. We are always learning and growing and changing. But he took me on for this 90-day challenge that Dr. Barnard, I think, had at the time for PCRM. And it was like, don't eat anything with a face. So I challenged him for 90 days and he took me on. And I'll never forget him because he goes, well, I can't have potatoes. And I said, why? He goes, because they have eyes. He said, you said, don't eat anything with a face. So, but in 90 days, he took his A1C and it was either 13.1 or 13.2 down to 5 in 90 days. So
that is incredible.
yeah.
Wow. I don't even know that I've seen that big of a change that quickly.
I was shocked.
Wow.
I remember writing, I have the email somewhere. I remember writing Dr. Barnard and I was like, it works. He goes, of course it works.
He's like, I see that all the time.
Yeah, it was great. And then recently I have a patient who, earlier this spring, an A1C of 12.4, and the A1C came in just this week at 5.8. So, and it's a combination of what we're doing with like fasting mimicking diets and moving to whole food plant-based and getting rid of, going out to eat all the time, moving more, it's been multifactorial. So it's, I always tell patients, there's not one pill, potion, powder, or person that's going to get you to your goal. It's a really complex myriad of things. And I don't mean complex hard, but it's a complex of things that come together that you consistently have to work at over time. And if you're consistent with it, pick a path and stay with it. I see a lot of people sometimes have done a little of this, a little of that, little of this, little of that. And sometimes they want me to endorse something that's not good for them. And I won't do that. So sometimes they don't come back, but, hopefully they'll find their path and maybe they'll come back around. But, I've done it with both of these individuals and there's been others in between, but these are the two bookends that really stand out to me, one from 10 years ago and one from now, current, like this week. Which I think are pretty remarkable because they've been really dramatic. And it shows the power of the body to heal. The body has an inherent ability to heal itself. And that's one of the tenets and the foundations of osteopathic medicine where I'm trained. And I went to everybody calls the Mecca, Kirksville. And so we had all these quotes, around the classroom wall that AT Still had some of them are pretty interesting. But really one of them is the body has an inherent ability to heal itself. And I think like Dr. Greger and Dr. Barnard have said, if every time you open your front door and you walk in and you're hitting your shin on that coffee table, move the coffee table and let your shin heal. Right. So just really look at what you're doing and what you're putting in your body. And it's not like don't worry about what your neighbor's doing and don't worry about what your sibling or your spouse or someone else is doing. You have to worry about this body that you've been given. This is yours. This is what you own. This is what you can control. And generally speaking, barring any, significant illnesses or challenges that people have, generally speaking, we are feeding ourselves. We are making the choice of what we're putting in our body, and we have to own that, right? So this is my vessel. This is what I'm responsible for. I can't be responsible for you or anyone else or, whoever may cross my path. And I can't worry about what they say or don't say about what I choose to put in my body. And it's my choice for me. But I know that I have certain risk factors. I know that I've had certain things happen to me. And I do it for myself, right? To give myself the best chance for the healthiest life and the healthiest years in my life that I can have. So anyway, so those are two patients that I have. And again, it shows the remarkable ability of the body to heal. And when they apply it and they apply it consistently, it works and without a lot of intervention. So.
And I have to agree with that. It's really fun to get to see people get well consistently, right?
Yeah.
As doctors, we get to see it happen all the time. It isn't like when people are starting a diet, you see the commercials and they say, these results are not typical. We actually do get to see typical results. If you follow a healthy lifestyle, you are going to see those results. Most people will see those results. It's really odd if you don't. And if you don't, there's something else going on. And actually, I've had the chance to be able to notice that in people where they've done really well with their lifestyle. And there's something that's still just not right. And it turns out there was something else going on that probably
Yeah.
would not have been found had they not been living this really healthy lifestyle, and it just didn't quite make sense, right?
Right, right. And I think too, people who are living these very healthy lifestyles, like, will probably never know what they're avoiding or preventing in terms of health complications, you know? And once somebody, if they have risk factors, they adopt this, like, they may have headed off and we may never know what potentially catastrophically could have happened to them, right? So let's not find out. Like, let's adopt the lifestyle. And, you know, it was even 4 years, 3 years ago, was it 2022? So 2.5 years ago, I went to the Plant Strong week conference, a week-long conference by, you know, the Esselstyn Foundation and Rip Esselstyn. And I really wanted to know what it was like from a patient perspective to go. And it was the first time they were offering CME, and there was only a handful of physicians there. There was a podiatrist, a physiatrist, myself, a couple of nurses, nurse practitioners, but that was it. It was just a tiny handful. And I remember going, oh, I don't know nearly as much as I think I know. So I learned a lot there, but not only that, but I came back and I was never really a big greens person. And now there's not a day that goes by that I don't eat greens, at least once or twice a day. So, you know, so we're learning, and I realize the benefits myself. And as we get older and as we hit perimenopause, menopause, and around age 60, we know that like our metabolism is pretty constant from 20 to 60. But once you hit about 60, it's like 0.7% decrease in your metabolic rate per year. And so as I eventually will get there to that age, hopefully, fingers crossed, you know, I look at what I'm
That's a
doing
good way to
too.
look at it, by the way, that you're
Yeah,
looking forward to getting to that age.
yeah, exactly. And I look at, you have to work smarter, not harder, right? So maybe
Yeah.
you don't have time to put, you know, 90 minutes on a road bike, you know, and try and compete in the next triathlon, but can you do 30 minutes? Can you go out for a walk? Can you, instead of eating, you know, that dessert, like, have just a piece of fruit, you know, or instead of, you know, your peanut butter and jelly on the processed breads, can you do an apple with peanut butter or celery with peanut butter? Can you do some of the, you know, one of my favorite things now is to take this German rye bread and smear it with mustard and put sliced tomatoes on it. Like, it's
Mm,
simple, it's easy. I like the tangy, herby kind of, and it's good. I'm not a big bread person, but I'm like, oh, it's like really satisfying. So,
yeah.
you know, and you don't have to have big complicated recipes or, you know, big spreads. It can just be very simple, but making simple changes and making, um, you know, if you like your, you know, mashed potatoes with the butter and garlic, maybe you do mashed potatoes with mashed cauliflower together and use a plant-based milk, not a butter, you know, put some seasonings in it. And you're taking what you love, but you're just making it healthier, right?
Yep.
So those things can, I'm a little off topic now, but anyway, you get the point.
No, yes,
So,
absolutely. Because it isn't about going from eating hamburgers to eating kale salads, right? You don't
right,
have to make
right,
this gigantic
right,
leap that is something
right.
completely different, because I'm a fan of mashed potatoes, and
Yeah,
I loved them from before and I still
yeah,
love them now, but now when I eat
yeah.
them, it's a much healthier version.
Yeah, of course. And the other thing to your point too, you know, making these changes, if you focus on the six tenants, you may not have all six plates spinning equally at the same time, right? There may be one area that's okay, this plate's fallen off, but let's keep the other five going and let's get these consistent and then we'll pick up that sixth one, right? And if like you're struggling with, you know, so you're still smoking, but you know, that's eventually a goal. Let's get the other ones good and then let's work on that one, right? So let's try and keep them spinning, but sometimes I think it's difficult to keep them all equally balanced and equally spinning. But let's work on what you can do and have self-compassion, right? Be kind to yourself in the
Yes.
process. And it takes time. We are a culture of instant gratification. We are a culture of misinformation. We are a culture of misrepresentation, because what you see on people's Instagrams and all this other stuff is not necessarily reality. Now, some people, you know, what their plate looks like is how they made it, and that's what it looks like, and good for them. That's not how my plates look, you know? Uh, so, but it takes time, and it takes time to be consistent. And the slower someone goes in terms of, um, and I don't mean slower at making changes, but if they have sort of a long game in mind, right? And know that this is a marathon and that finish line may keep moving out further and further, but you're still running that marathon, right? You're still working on it. And it's something as you do this, the more consistent you are, the more reflexive it becomes. So it becomes second nature. And this is just what you do. And it's part of who you are. And it's not this huge uphill battle, every time
Yeah,
you want to make a change.
I think that's so important to that topic of being consistent and not having the goal be perfection.
Right.
Allowing yourself to be on this journey, knowing that it's not going to be a perfect journey, but that the journey
Right.
is meant to get you to the end of your life, right? You are
Right.
trying to figure out how to make this something that you can do for the rest of your life. And
Right.
it's not as simple as just saying, well, I'm going to stop eating animal foods tomorrow. Um,
Right.
most people have to do it piece by piece. And it does make
Right.
it a lot easier to make that transition over time. And then eventually, the way that I feel now is it does feels like second nature. It doesn't feel, I would actually have a hard time figuring out how to not eat the way that I eat now, right? It's kind of like when
Right.
you brush your
Right.
teeth and you learn a different way of brushing your teeth, like instead of back and forth, you're doing circles. You got to really think about it a few times
Right.
before you do it.
Right.
Whereas if you
Right.
just regularly brush your teeth, you could do it and be like, wait, did I brush my teeth? I don't even remember, right? It's just,
Right. 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 Right.
and that's kind of how it feels for me with this way of eating, is it's just second nature.
I think too, one of the things that can make it easier for people is you don't need to buy complicated cookbooks. You don't need complicated recipes. Is invest in, like, I bought a used instant pot for like $75 and I use it all the time. So batch cooking is the message, right? So in a day, I can make the beans, a couple of different beans, and I can make, rice or grain in there, and I put it on the refrigerator. And then I bake. I always have little tofu cubes around. I don't even season them anymore. I just put them in the oven and I chop them up and I bake them in the oven and I have them in the refrigerator because then I can grab them and eat them. And I put some potatoes ahead of time and I always have greens. So like today, I put some watercress down, some frozen peas, half of a cooked sweet potato, and some kidney beans, and put some seasoning on it, threw it in the microwave, and that's it, right? So I can put any of those things together for any meal that I want, and it's super simple, and it's tasty, and it's filling. And it's interesting when you eat the things that are nutrient dense, you don't get hangry, you don't have these cravings, your blood sugar's not dropping or spiking. It's just, everything's just kind of levels out. It's really interesting to kind of have that feeling like, oh wow, I'm not really craving anything. I don't really need anything, maybe I'm just
Yeah.
eating because I'm bored, but generally speaking, it's just really simplifying it. And it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't need complex supplements. You don't need, these, I call them these bright shining objects where you have to go after. It's just really like maybe document what you're doing with your time and where can you trade that time to spend time in the kitchen, so that maybe you're batch cooking for 2 or 3 hours once a week, but you don't have to be in the kitchen other than just to assemble a bowl, throw it in the microwave or the oven, and then you're done, just to really, and that actually gives you time back in your life that you can spend doing other things during the week. So
yeah, I'm right on board with you there. I love eating very simply. I also love cooking and I love following a recipe and making fancy things, but that's not very often. It's
right.
usually
Right.
very quick,
Right.
satisfying, nutritious, easy. Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and that's important, is making sure that you've always got things available in your freezer, in your pantry, where you can throw things together very quickly.
Right. And that's the idea, things that are gonna, like dried beans, you can buy, a 2 pound or a 1 pound bag of beans, and then you get 12 servings out of it for like $1.70. I did an analysis on this recently. So you can get 12 servings. It's a half a cup of beans, 8 grams of protein per serving. And that's all 12 servings for $1.70, all 12 servings, right?
Wow.
So it's really inexpensive, it's a good way to eat.
Yeah, definitely. So, the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, I don't know, there might be some people who don't know all of the 6 pillars. If you don't mind just kind of going through those and then just telling us which one's your favorite.
So there's obviously nutrition, there's sleep, there's exercise, there's stress, there's relationships, and there's toxins. I think probably my favorite one is movement, because that's something that anyone can do anywhere. And that has such great benefit, even if you're not losing weight and the number on the scale doesn't change. Um, First of all, weight is never static. So you might weigh, you know, 10 pounds today, but you're 12 pounds tomorrow, but 9 pounds 3 days later, right? There's so many variables that go into that. Um, that I think movement, because movement, you can get those endorphins, those feel good hormones. It can help your pulmonary health, your cardiovascular health, your bones, your muscles, your balance. And also, we know, especially as you get older, resistance training is key. That's key in muscle production. That's key in preventing falls. That's key in maintaining balance or proprioception. It's for prevention of osteopenia and osteoporosis. There's so much with resistance training. And it can be as little as, 2 to 3 times a week. So you can do resistance bands, you can do it in your home. There's a little bit of yoga that, that depending upon the pose you're doing in yoga, that you're using your body weight, but getting some resistance bands, doing push-ups against your wall, you doing squats, holding a couple gallons of water. Or if you're in a gym, like one day a week, I train with a group in the gym that's run by the owner of the gym, and it's very stripped down. It's very no frills, but they're really good, trustworthy, reliable people. A lot of people are natural bodybuilders there. Some are vegan. But it's a fun group. One gentleman's in his 70s. There's another woman that's probably my age, and different people come and go. But there's kind of a community around it. But they're really good. We're not doing crazy stuff. And so if you can find a group that you can have some camaraderie with, maybe start a walking group in your neighborhood, right? So just walking. Open up your garage, your basement, and invite your neighbors in that one day a week you're going to commit to 30 minutes of exercise, and then do some on your own. But I think movement, because it really encompasses so much of our lives, and so much of our lives have become very sedentary. We need to really work against that. And a lot of people will say to me too, just throughout the years, people say, well, I walk a lot at work, or I do this at work. I think it's really important to exercise outside of work, because we create a fair amount of asymmetry getting into a car a certain way, or climbing onto a high-low a certain way, or the way we do work on the ladder on the roof a certain way. We're always very asymmetric, like how we do it. It's like you're always writing right-handed, like you said, brushing your teeth a different way, try writing left-handed. So doing things like stretching, flexibility, some gentle easy yoga, resistance training to kind of help build out that symmetry in the body, I think is really important too, because then we can help avoid injuries. It can help prevent some back injuries, where we get the muscle imbalance. A lot of back pain is related to like imbalances in the muscle. So really working on just kind of evening out the body. And also, again, it just helps reduce stress. So that's my long answer.
Oh, I love it, because you don't really realize how much movement is attached to so many of the other pillars, actually.
Right.
You have to fuel yourself with good whole
Right.
plant foods to be able to be
Right.
more successful with your movement. When
Right.
you're moving outside, you're getting into nature, right?
Yes.
That helps with not only just, it feels good to be out in nature, like you mentioned, the endorphins, but you're also, if you're out walking with a friend, you're socializing.
Right.
There
Right.
are a lot of things that can be tied to movement that I think help you be successful in actually many more of the pillars.
Yeah, there's a walking club here that I joined, and I have a neighbor that, like, we went out this morning, and so the walking club is very good, and people are very focused on getting their miles. And I think it was in the spring, like she crossed like the 19,000 mile threshold, and I get little, patches. She's in her 80s, right? She can outwalk anyone I know. I mean, she's
Wow.
much older than I am. We went out this morning, and she's going. Like, we're up and down hills, ravines, tree roots, off the beaten path. I mean, this is like, these people work and they hike, but we'll go out in addition. But it's so fun because I come back and I'm like, oh, I'm in such a better mood, So
Yeah. Yeah,
it's really good.
exactly.
And then
Good
you
for
get
your
the
mood, good
wisdom
for
of
the
other people
stress.
yeah, and you get the wisdom and the benefit of people who are a different generation from you. And I do remember her saying, like, very difficult time in her life when she joined the walking club like 30 some years ago, how it really helped her. So, making those connections can really help. Can really help. Oh man, she can walk me under the table any day. So yeah.
Well,
So
that's who you aspire to be, right? You want to be that
yeah,
same woman someday.
Well, and to what you mentioned too, I think a key that I want to mention is how it touches exercise, or nutrition. How exercise touches nutrition is complex carbohydrates are the primary fuel source for our brain and our muscles. You have to have that. If you don't, you're going to be fatigued, you're going to have headaches, you're not going to be able to sustain any kind of endurance whatsoever. We do not store protein at all. We have no capability. We have infinite ability to store fat, and we have about a 4-hour window to store carbohydrates. So it's really important to continually fuel your body with complex carbohydrates, and that's whole food, plant-based, right? Foods in their minimally processed form. So
Yeah, I know. And the carb needs to not be a dirty word anymore. People are so
right,
afraid of carbs because of that just connotation that we've created, right?
right,
That carbs
right.
are bad.
It's a water molecule that has a carbon attached. So it's a hydrated carbon, right? So that's where the carbohydrate comes in. And if you break it down to people that simply, you're like, well, I gave up carbs. It's impossible. Like I
Yeah.
mean, it's impossible, right? Like, so you can give up the highly processed and the ultra processed. Great, that's perfect, right? But going to the whole food, and it doesn't, again, a bag of beans, 12 servings, $1.70 for all 12 servings combined. It doesn't have to be that expensive. You can buy, sometimes the grocery stores here will sell bananas that are like brown and they look really bad that no one's going to buy, but they're like pennies on the dollar. Take the peels off, throw them in the freezer, use them for banana bread, use them for your smoothies. There's ways that you can figure things out that are a little bit cheaper. So
Yeah. Yeah. So going into kind of like the telemedicine stuff that you and I do, we work
yeah.
as lifestyle medicine doctors. Uh, who would you say would benefit by having a lifestyle medicine appointment with one of the doctors that works at Love Life?
I think anyone, actually. I can't think of a person or an age group that would not benefit. Anyone. It's never too old. It's never too early to start. So if mom wants to come on and is concerned about how to give their kids the best chance, I think that's appropriate. I think someone who's maybe had, even if you've had a bypass surgery or you've had a stent, or you're like, it's too late for me. It's not. Dr. Esselstyn has shown it's not too late, and Dr. Ornish has shown it's not too late. And I think the message I'd like to share with people too is that we are very evidence-based. I've had patients come on and tell me that, they've had chest pain. I was like, you need to see a cardiologist right away. And they're like, I think it's indigestion. And then a week later, they end up with a triple or quadruple bypass. It's a real story that was a patient of mine. And
Wow.
so we don't ignore it. We are very evidence-based. And there are times when there's a need for someone to be on a statin, and I'll start a statin with them, right? Or I'll start them on insulin. We don't ignore our training as clinicians. We have augmented it, and we have added to it so we can offer more, but we don't ignore the basic tenets. So anybody can benefit.
Yeah. Great. What do you wish that people knew about lifestyle medicine? I guess the way that it is different than traditional medicine.
Oh, time. I mean, just
Yeah.
having time. I don't know that I could go back to an 8-minute patient visit
No.
anymore. I know too much now. It's like, I think, I don't remember if it was you and Dr. Bizzoni last time you were talking about it. It's like, but once you know, you can't unknow. So I love, like, the hour visits and the half-hour visits go so fast. It's just crazy how fast they go. I'm like, oh, and oftentimes I'm 45 minutes into a half-hour visit and I just keep going, and I'm just like, don't worry about it. We're having too much fun. I'm getting too much information. We're helping you too much. Um, that's how passionate I am about it. But having the time, and I don't think I've ever heard somebody have anything negative to say about the amount of time that we give them. People are like, wow, like, you can really do this. And it makes a difference. And I have some patients that they want more counseling than they do, actual, like, plant-based stuff or medicine. It's like, I'm really stressed in my life here. And we get a fair amount of behavioral health training in family medicine, or at least I did going through my residency. I do not at all profess to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but there's just some things in family medicine. a lot of what people come to family medicine for is lifestyle related, probably 70-75%. So if we can talk about that, and really help, that really helps them.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing about lifestyle medicine is realizing that we are not held to an insurance company standard of meeting a certain metric. We can say, this is what we believe is in your best interest. We can help you get there. It's up to you whether you want to do this or not, but I can't force something onto someone because Blue Cross Blue Shield is holding me to a metric that 7 out of 10 of my patients have to meet some arbitrary number that they've decided. I can work with the patient on their timeline, and I can work with the patient within their own capabilities at the time, right? And to get them hopefully to the goals that they have set, and go from there.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think it's hard to believe that we both used to have these really short visits
Yeah.
and somehow got through those. Having the time, like you said, is just it goes by fast somehow, even though we get a lot more time than your typical doctor's appointment. But I think a big thing too is people feel like their doctors, this is something that I hear a lot, is they feel like my doctor just doesn't listen to me.
Right.
And it may be the doctor, right? It might be a doctor that just doesn't do a good job of listening to their patients. But I think also a big part of that is just the amount of time. Like you said, those doctors have to do certain things, have to complete certain items, have to ask certain questions. And can they really sit down and really listen to what you care
Right.
about and what your goals are? It's hard to do in a really short visit. And that is one thing that I think really does benefit us, is having the time to just sit and listen. Right.
And I agree with you. And I think one thing too, it took about 6 months, but someone asked me the same question you asked me the other day, and I think it was a week ago or so. And my first answer was, I don't have chest pain anymore. Like, it literally took about 6 months and my own chest pain went away and my own mental health is better. So it's not only harmful, that system, to the patients, because care is so fragmented and people don't get their voices heard. And I think by and large, patients are trained not to be good advocates for their own health. So that's one thing I try and tell my patients is, you have to be your own advocate. Like, you have to really have your own voice. And then recognizing that it's also harmful for the clinicians too. It's bad for their mental health and their physical health. But literally it took about 6 months. But I just remember waking up one day and I was like, I don't have chest pain anymore.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping up, I just want to ask you two kind of more fun, lighthearted questions. I am curious to know what your favorite plant-based meal is. I guess right now, because mine changes all the time, but.
Yeah, I would say my go-to, and this is my go-to, and I kind of become addicted to it, is I love Fuji apples, but I mix, I don't know, I just kind of eyeball it. And my favorite peanut butter forever, no matter where I've lived around the world, literally, I've always gotten this peanut butter. It's by Crazy Richards. It's just one ingredient, and they're an Ohio company. So I'm supporting kind of local. I live in Ohio currently. That, and I mix it with like a tablespoon or whatever of like raw cacao powder. And so it's like a chocolate peanut butter with my apples. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't eat that. Probably not. I mean, the amount of peanut butter I eat is probably not, I don't know that I would advocate for that. It's great, but it's like my one vice. So, yeah, that's like, it's a little effort to put it together, but I just love it. You get the crunch, you get a little sweet, you get a little protein with the fat with the peanut butter, and it's just, yeah, it's good. So,
and I mean, it all is whole plants, right?
Yeah, it's all whole plants. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's good.
Oh, that's amazing. And then you talked a lot about how you really enjoy movement and that pillar of lifestyle medicine. So what is your favorite way to get daily movement or physical activity in your life?
Sometimes it's hard to motivate this body for whatever reason. So I like a variety. Like, I recently bought a used spinning bike from a gym for a very low price. So now I'm like, because I used to be, when I lived in Europe, I did like hundreds of kilometers a week on a street bike, but I just don't feel safe doing that now. So that, and I was a former master swimmer, but I had 2 shoulder surgeries. So every once in a while I'll get in the pool. That's okay. I've become certified as a yoga instructor several years ago, although I don't teach. It really helped me understand my own body better. So I'm getting better about being more consistent with a daily movement practice. And there's a couple of good people online that I will follow. And I have an instructor in Germany that I do stuff with periodically online. And I think just walking, like I'll go with the hiking club around here. I'll go with my neighbor. And my neighbor's actually been a lifesaver for me because when I've had different surgeries, I've had a fair amount of orthopedic surgeries in the past few years. I'm like, all right, can you just walk me to the corner? So, just doing something. So, regardless of where you're at, there's always something someone can do. And so I always try and find something, a little bit. So, yeah, so I like variety. My brain needs variety. I can't do the same thing over and over again. So, and
Well,
I always say
no,
the
go
best
ahead.
exercise is the one, patients say, what's the best exercise? It's the one you're going to do, right? Whatever gets you motivated and moving, that's the one to do. I've done this before. So this is a message to patients. When I did a lot of running, and I used to run marathons and half marathons and did a lot of distance running. It's kind of I'm engineered and wired to be a distance athlete. And so I really like distance swimming and distance running, neither of which I really do anymore. But I remember it being like really bitterly cold and icy, and there was a stairwell in the house I was living at the time. So I just set a timer, and I would go up and down the stairs, and I would run around, and I would just do that loop for like 30 minutes, right? It seems crazy, but I'd go like from the basement up to the second story, back down. I would go like around the living room, dining room, kitchen, back up and down. And so you can make it work wherever you're at. You don't need fancy equipment or to spend a lot of money. So the same with nutrition. You don't need to spend a lot of money on crazy supplements, just eat the
Yep.
food. So
You can find a way.
you
Absolutely.
can find a
Well,
way. Yeah.
oh my goodness, your background is incredible. Marathons, master swimming, biking, yoga. Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
A little bit,
I'm like,
a little bit of everything. Like Jacqueline of all trades, master of none. So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of
yeah,
like me too.
yeah. But
I like to
I'm
stay busy doing a
curious.
lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. Just curious.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but this has been great. I'm curious, what is your favorite food right now?
Ooh, I have to say cauliflower. Roasted
Okay.
cauliflower is what I crave on a daily
Okay.
basis. I can't get enough of it. So I just grab a frozen bag of cauliflower, put it in my air fryer, and I do that, just air fry it at 400 for about 20 minutes. Gets it nice and
Mm.
crispy. Oh, it is the best. And then I just put that with whatever, whatever I have left over, potatoes or rice or anything like that. Yeah, that's been
There's
my
a
favorite. I
great
know it's so simple, but
No, it's great, and I know we're out of time here. We got to go, but the forks over knives. I was just flipping through, and I had some purple cauliflower that I bought at the farmer's market, and I bought it from an Amish farmer, and he's like, "Oh, has the highest antioxidants because of the dark color," and I was like, "All right, I'll try it." So I was flipping through, and I found this like braising sauce from Forks Over Knives, and it has capers, lemon juice, nutritional yeast, garlic, and mustard in it. And I made it yesterday. So good, so
really.
good. Yeah, so you'll have to. So for anybody out there who wants to try it, go to Forks Over Knives, and I'll see if I can find the clip and I'll send it to you. So
And
it's
I
really
have
good.
capers in my fridge. I have capers in my fridge. So
There you
and
go.
mustard. I mean, I've got everything. So yeah,
Yeah,
maybe I'll
it's
do that today.
delicious. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's delicious. Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for being here today and letting us get to know a little bit about you. It's been incredible. It's been such a fun way of it's just fun to just chat with you, but
yeah,
also just
yeah.
for people
Thank
to
you.
get to know you a little bit better. So, everyone, see you. I told you that she's amazing. And I am just so grateful to get to work alongside some of the most incredible physicians on the planet, just like Dr. O'Connor, who really
Yeah,
do practice what they preach. And if you have not had the pleasure of working with one of our doctors yet, now is the time. So maybe you are suffering from some of the chronic conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Or maybe you just want a doctor who's on your side, supportive of your lifestyle. Maybe you're just sick of taking tons of medications. Maybe you just don't feel your best. Please come and visit us at telehealth.love.life to make an appointment. As I said earlier, we have 8 fantastic doctors who cover all 50 states, DC, and international. So go ahead and visit our website at telehealth.love.life, or you can call us at 888-420-7284. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Dr. Niki Davis with Love.Life Telehealth. Thanks, Dr. O'Connor.
thank you, Dr. Davis.